Since the dawn of time, man has been curious. And for almost as long, the Vibes Broadcast Network has sought the truth. Investigate, discuss, explore. Okay, maybe in other episodes, but this one is just listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very privileged to have Mr. Roger Butts here. And he has a book called Seeds of Devotion. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and get to know him. So, Roger, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Roger Butts. I'm coming to you from Colorado Springs. We're having a wonderful late winter snowstorm right now. It's beautiful. And I am a minister. I minister in Parker, Colorado, and here in Colorado Springs. And I was a hospital chaplain for 7 years. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because that's what my book, Seeds of Devotion, is about. And through that, I just saw so many inspiring things and so much beauty. And so that's what I'm coming with. I grew up in Illinois, grew up in a family in Illinois of blue collar, kind of lower middle class folks. And then somehow I ended up in school in the mountains of North Carolina and moved to DC. And worked and went to seminary in DC, met my beloved, who's also a minister there. And we have 3 kids and a black lab. And the hierarchy goes like this, Kyle. Marta, my beloved, loves the black lab most of all. And then certain of the kids. And then I'm down at the bottom of the list. So it's really, really good to be with you.
Thank you. Yeah, when it comes to my kids, when I get one of them alone, I always tell them, you're my favorite, but don't tell the
Exactly.
others.
Exactly.
All right. So what inspired you to write your book?
Well, what inspired me to write Seeds of Devotion was that for many years now, I've been a minister for 20 years. So I have all these stories from different religions and from different perspectives and so on. And I have all these stories from my own life. And I have them from sermons, different sermons, but I realized I have a whole bunch of them. And I've been having to write prayers because of my hospital chaplaincy.
Right.
And I love to ask questions like you do. And so my friend has been on me for like 10 years. She has a publishing house and she's been on me for like 10 years. Roger, you should write a book. And I was in the midst of COVID and having all these incredible experiences as a hospital chaplain with COVID. And, you don't go out to dinner as much. You don't go to the theater or the symphony. And so I was like, or, a rock show. And, you can't go see Steely Dan at Red Rocks because there's no Red Rocks open right now. And so I had all this free time and I took her up on it and they took the book and I realized I had like 50 stories. Wow. And every story I tell is like a page or 2 long, very simple story, but, try to be impactful. And then I have all these prayers and I had to write a few more, but I put the prayers with the story and then I ask a few questions. And what I'm trying to do is say, shit happens, stuff happens. Like I've seen the bumper sticker, right? Like stuff happens. And it's true. Everybody has stuff. And what I want to do is say, how can we take that experience and really name it and then approach it from a prayerful or mindful or awake kind of perspective with eyes wide open and come at it with a prayerful attitude and then ask the right questions that will help you take that experience and that prayer and make meaning of it, make purpose of it. I don't think everything happens for a reason. Some things are just god awful and just happen. But I think every experience, you can examine it and look at it, and with an open heart and an open mind, try to figure out what you're being asked to learn.
There's some of the stories, like personal stories from patients that you've met.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, my little brother, he ended up having a problem with his spleen. And so, I mean, you could just touch him and it would be a huge bruise on him. And so he went into the Texas Children's there in Houston. And, I don't remember a lot about that experience, but I do remember that there were kids there that were going through chemo and things like that. And for them to keep a positive attitude when they could possibly die that day or the next day, that's inspiring in itself. And when you think about those children, there's so many folks out here now that want to be victims and things like that, and always complaining about this, that, and the other. Why don't you go into the hospital and see these children and what they're going through, and then tell me what you're going through? You know what I mean?
It's not what do people say? It's not the suffering Olympics. It's not like
thank you.
Right.
But I don't want to take away from people's suffering. Don't get me
everybody
wrong.
has stuff, right?
Right. I mean, we've all gone through something.
Right. But yeah, and I think that if you can examine your life and come to it with good open questions, you'll learn from those experiences. Your brother had to go through some stuff, and it was worse than some other people had it, and it was better than others. But everybody got to learn. Did he come out okay?
He did, but he passed away 20 years ago. So
okay.
Yeah.
So that's what this book is about, is like seeing people in their rawness and their vulnerability and their sadness, and just saying, let's talk about it. And if somebody can ask the right questions about their experience, I think they can really learn and grow in wisdom and spirit. So there are some silly stories, and some sweet stories. Like a silly story is like when I was in Davenport, at a church in Davenport, there was this woman I knew from the time she was 101 until she was 104,
Wow.
And she was a feisty old lady. The first time I met her, she was living in this home, beautiful home, with some other older people being cared for. And she was watching C-SPAN and like yelling at the TV. It was so great. She was feisty, but I knew her for 101 until 104, and she would come to church twice a year when her kids came to town, and her kids were like 75, right? So they'd wheel her over at the receiving line, where you shake everybody's hand. She grabbed me by the hand, and she couldn't hear my sermon. She didn't know what I was up to, but she'd say, "I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here." It's like I didn't deserve it. I did nothing to earn it, but out of a place of deep generosity and gratitude. She's like, "I'm so glad you're here." So there are stories like that. And then there's a story about like one night on a Friday night. I just think this is the sweetest story I've ever heard and been a part of. But on a Friday night, I was working at the hospital. I was there 7 years. And I was working at the hospital, and a nurse called and said, "There's this little old lady on the 4th floor, and she's confused, and she's going to go to hospice in a couple of days. Can you come and visit her? Her family is gone." And I walked in, and the nurse said to me, he said, like, "She's in there just muttering the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, And I was like, I know that prayer. So I walked and I held her hand, and she's just muttering. She's not very cognizant. She's not very awake, but she's muttering this. And Then towards the end, she notices me. She wakes up enough to notice me. And she says, "Oh dear, I seem to have forgotten the end, but thank you, God, for everything."
Wow.
I like crying my eyes out, it's like, what a great prayer.
Oh my gosh. What inspired you to get into ministry?
Well, so I've only worked in religion and politics.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to do is get a sex ed certification,
Mm-hmm.
so I can say that I've only worked in religion, politics, and sex. But even when I worked on Capitol Hill, I was hanging out with like Catholic workers, and like these Catholic workers wouldn't make enough money to pay taxes, and they lived very simply, and they just opened their homes to people who were homeless or whatever and needed help. And on every Tuesday, they'd go to the Pentagon and they would be out, protesting war, but they would be there every Tuesday morning. And so the Pentagon workers would come up and they're holding their signs, but they got to know each other. So eventually it just like, they're just sharing donuts back and forth, they're becoming really good friends. But I'm hanging out with all these religious people trying to make the world a better place, a more beautiful place. And so I'm not very good at politics. I just don't have the ambition or drive for it,
Right.
And so, but I'm hanging out with all these religious types. And so I really wanted to go to seminary to study what helps a faith community, whatever kind it is, because I was hanging out with lots of different kinds, but what helps them express and live out their deepest values. And so I wanted to study that. And so then I became a minister, and I've been a minister for 20 years. And I'm still interested in that question. I just really think that's an important question. But I've chosen to live my whole life in response to that question, not knowing fully, but trying to approximate it.
I've always said that whether God is real or not, he's necessary.
Right. And, like just the sense, like everybody gets to belong. Everybody belongs. Right. And that's what I think of God as, is like this spirit that says, you're okay. You're okay. You're loved.
When I started going to church, that's where I learned to really love people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you don't love people, like, what's the point? Right. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. Like I know plenty of atheists who are like so good and so great. And I know plenty of people of faith who I'd be like, I do not want to go and have a beer with you. Thank you very much. Right? I mean, it's just, it doesn't matter to me what people call themselves. I just want them to flourish and be well. I want everybody to be just nice and peaceful. But I would say this book is an invitation to empty yourself so that goodness and positivity and aliveness and flourishing can enter into your thing. Here, you want to hear an example of what I'm talking about? Please. And then just tell me to be quiet once I go on. You'll love this. All right. You're going to love this. This is after the chapter called God Say a Word, in which I talk about all these examples in the Bible where God is like just speaking directly to people. And I'm like, that's never happened to me. How come that's never happened? I'd like that to happen to me sometime, where God just speaks in a voice that I understand. But I decided that the closest thing that I've ever had was when I was driving down I-95 from DC out to the suburbs to visit some friends. It was Thanksgiving, clear blue day, and the Indigo Girls were on the CD player in my car. And that was like close enough for me. That was close enough for me. So here's a prayer that follows that story. listen, be quiet, be still, be gentle, relax your jaw, loosen your shoulders, listen, be gentle, be still, be quiet. Let the silence and the stillness make sacred the place you're in right now. Look at the light or the table or the cloud or the moon or the sun or the wild wind through the wild trees. They too are a sacred text. Listen, be still, be gentle, be quiet. The world does not need your words. Let your mind crawl into your heart space and let it take a nap for a little while. There's nothing to think, nothing to know. Surrender to that silence. Let a still, quiet, gently keep you just for a while.
Man, you know, if I might interject a little bit here, my closest that I feel to God is that stillness.
Yes.
It's when I'm in nature, when I'm
Yes.
surrounded by the water, the trees, the animals. I feel it when I look at my grandchildren.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I feel it when I look in the eyes of my wife.
Oh, yeah. Dude, totally. Yeah. And so many people, whether, like we create our world so that we avoid that silence and avoid that stillness. We get addicted to busyness, or we get addicted to making money or taking pills or whatever it is.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Keeping up with, oh my God. And so it's like, just be quiet for a bit. Like, get out to those trees, what is, like, some Asian country, I think, calls it like a forest bath or something. Like when you go out into the forest and it just bathes you and it's quiet.
People need to learn to look past themselves, get out of your head, get beyond what you are always worried about.
Yes.
And start looking at other people, start helping other people. It's amazing when you do something for someone. I mean, you're putting a little notch on your belt, of course, but it's almost like your problems go away for that moment.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what this book is. A little stories like Gladys Hitchens or that little old lady on the fourth floor, little prayers like that, and then reflection questions. So that's what I decided to write this book, because my friend encouraged me and said I could do it. And then I compiled all my favorite stories. And, since your listeners are positivity people, are really looking for inspiration, I'll share a little brief story in here called The Messiah. And it's about a monastery out in the country. And in the monastery, it had been very popular and like lots of people came out, but all of a sudden, people weren't coming out, and the monks were at each other's throats, and jealousy and pettiness were all over the place, and something was just off. And the abbot, the superior, the person in charge, grew distressed, and he was worried. He was worried about the monastery and his brothers. And he remembered his friend Abraham, the rabbi, across the way. And so he went to see his friend, the rabbi, and he said, look, the brothers are at each other's throat. I don't know what's happening. Nobody's coming around because they can feel that it's just a drag out there. What shall I do? And the rabbi looks at him and says, I have no idea what you should do. But this came to me while we were talking. I just offer it up as a gift. He said, it just came to me that the Messiah is among you. The Messiah is one of you. Have you heard this story before?
No, I haven't. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. He was like, okay. And he left. Thank you, Rabbi. So he goes back and he tells the brothers, Well, Rabbi was really helpful. He's a great listener, and he didn't have anything practical, but he did say the rabbi, that the Messiah is among us. And all of a sudden, Brother Frank is like, well, it can't be me. We know it's not me, but it might be Brother Fred over there. I mean, look what Brother Fred brings to the table. He's such a nice man, and he's such a good guy, and he's such a good listener. Or it might be, Brother Ezekiel. He is just really funny, and I love him to death. And so the possibility that the person across from you might just be the Messiah, right? Invites you to take a look at them in a different way, right? Brother Frank was like, oh, it's not me. But everybody else was like, well, maybe it's Brother Frank. He's a good guy, right? And suddenly, all of a sudden, you begin to encounter people in that way that you're talking about. How can I serve? When I serve bread and soup to Brother Frank now, I'm serving the Messiah, or potentially the Messiah, right? And so your eyes are open to a different reality. So, of course, once they start treating each other better, like, oh, I don't want to piss off the Messiah, right? Who would want to do such a thing? Once they start treating each other better and seeing the beauty in each person, all of a sudden, the whole monastery is lifted up. And suddenly, people start coming back around. I'd like some spiritual direction. I'd like to take a day here. Tell me what I should do. That's the story of the Messiah among us. That's in there too.
I often wonder sometimes when you see someone on the say on the side of the road, they're homeless, they need a helping hand. If that person isn't an angel in disguise, to see who might extend some kind of love and help to this person. I mean, it shouldn't be your motivating factor. Or just even
seeing them, right? I mean, even if you can't give them food or money, because that may not be what's necessary, but just to see them and acknowledge their full humanity, right?
I've talked about how you go to maybe the grocery store. Okay. One of the things I don't like going to the self-service line. I like to go, even if I have to wait a little extra to go to the cashier, just so I can interact with somebody. And you get there and you acknowledge them, you make them smile. That's another thing. I want to make at least one person smile every day.
That's the whole thing, right?
And you get to this person and you make them smile. Maybe you have steered them from doing some self-harm.
Yeah, you never know.
They could have been on the verge of just giving up, and then somebody has, acknowledged them and let them feel that love, and it could have changed their whole outlook.
That is the whole thing. Like, that's the whole idea of encounter, right? The encounter is everything. And just see, what you're communicating to that person is, you're more than just a transactional part of my world, right? I need some bread and I'm going to give you some cash, and but you're not a robot, you're a full human, and I see your humanity and I'm grateful. That's such a gift. So you want me to keep going?
Oh, of course.
So this is from a chapter called "Hold Ever So Gently the Beauty and Dignity of the Broken Heart in Front of You." It's about chaplaincy. That's the whole of chaplaincy. So I say, love has the first and the last word. Sometimes a spouse, a child, a partner, a best friend, a beloved, about to leave their loved one behind for the last time, will look at me and their eyes will speak. I know I have to leave this hospital eventually. But how do I do that? How do I go home alone without them? Look, I say in the book, look, some questions don't have an answer. You just go ahead and do the next thing at whatever time you can do it. Love will not stand in the way of your deep grief. Love will let you stay bedside as long as necessary. Hold ever so gently the heartbreak right in front of you, yours and theirs, and the next thing, whatever that is, will be done.
Mm. I'm going to ask you something. Have you seen the movie that's just came out from Zachary Levi, where he plays Kurt Warner? It's something
guy?
Right. Something underdog. I can't remember exactly what it is, but
No.
next time I see Zachary, I'm going to punch him in the face because he made me cry in this movie.
I love it. That's good.
But
that's good for you. Even if you're from Texas, it's good for you. It's good to cry, even if you're from Texas.
But he met this lady, and he fell for her, and she had a son that he had something happen to him when he was a baby that made him go blind. And anyway, he ended up developing this relationship, and the kid kept surprising him with the things that he could do, just because, number one, Kurt was spending some time with him, and he wasn't coddling him. He was, helping him to expand. I mean, here's this kid, he wanted to be a truck driver, but the closest he got was Kurt let him go out and use the riding lawnmower. Right. His mama freaked out, but he's like, no, he's doing just fine. He said he was ready, and I believed him.
Love it.
It inspired him to go out and win football games. He didn't give up on his dream of becoming a football player. And, he had been working in a grocery store before he got to be.
Isn't that amazing?
With the brand. Right. But that's what I'm talking about. Inspiration. You just take some time with somebody. I'm not saying to coddle them. You don't have to coddle anyone. Treat them like a human being. Treat them like you would anybody else.
And it's a two-way road, right? It's a two-way street.
And look how they inspired each other. So I recommend you find that movie and watch it.
I will do it.
It's a really good movie.
I love it. So can I leave you with a blessing, Kyle?
Oh, of course.
This is a blessing for you and your people. And I'm so glad to have spent some time with you today. And I'm going to go look up that book. That movie for sure. And what I love about this is that we're completely different humans. Mm-hmm. Like we live probably very different worlds in some ways, but I love that we can just encounter each other in this way, right? We're modeling what you're talking about.
And I miss that. I miss just being able to, we don't have to have a conflict just because we don't agree on everything.
No, absolutely not. And humor, I'm convinced, the bio that I have for most places where I go to speak, mm-hmm. and the bio in this book says, Roger believes humor and grace will save us all. I'm just convinced that humor is the key to everything. What do you think?
I think so too.
If you can laugh with somebody, that's so right. Beautiful.
That's right.
Here's the blessing for you and for your beloved and for your listeners. And this is after a chapter on the death of the Buddha, where the Buddha's dying and all of his people are around him, and they're like, what are we supposed to do now? And he was like, go and make yourself a light. I've done my thing. It's your turn. Go and do your thing, right? So after that chapter, I say this, and this is for you. May life surprise you today. May a sense of grace come out of nowhere in the middle of your daily tasks. May a sense of peace find you in the unlikeliest of places. May a sense of courage and renewal find you. May God's love surround you. And may a gentleness, a returning quietness, and a restoring stillness be with you now and always. And may faith, hope, and love be your constant companions. God bless your day.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Can I tell you a little story?
Yeah, absolutely. I love stories.
For years and years, I've been an insomniac, and There was one point where I was agnostic, and I have a bit of a dyslexia. I used to lay in bed at night and wonder if there really is a dog.
Bravo. He'll be here all week, everybody.
Ba-dum-bum.
I love it.
Hey, I got millions of dad jokes. All you have to do is call, and I'll be glad to share them.
Dad jokes. Dad jokes are the best. Seeds of Devotion.
No,
Weekly Contemplations on Faith.
I was going to ask
Amazon.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but do you have a website?
Well, I don't have a website yet. One is coming, but I write on medium.com.
Okay.
At Rev Roger Butts, I think.
Okay.
And this book, Seeds of Devotion, is on Amazon.
Mhm.
So I have a little page there. And it's available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble online and stuff like that. So
if you have a link that you could send me
yes.
People can purchase your book, I'd like to put that in the description of the video. And,
oh yeah.
Do you have any social media?
I'm on Facebook, and I'm on medium.com, and I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use Twitter a whole lot.
Yeah, I gave up my Twitter. I don't
even know, like 140 words or so, or whatever it is. Like, no, I can't do that. I talk too much for that.
Exactly. So it's Seeds of Devotion by Roger Butts.
Yep.
And I will put those links up in the description so people can click on it and go to it. Do you have plans to write anything else?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of my second book, but it's a compilation book this time. So I've invited like 18 of my friends, basically, and some people that are new to me to write with me. And it's going to be a book called Praying the Poets. Mm-hmm. So whether you're atheist or agnostic and don't know if there's really a dog or not, or dyslexic, whatever it is you are, Christian, Buddhist, humanist, atheist, anything, whatever you are, the idea of poetry, sacred or secular, whatever poetry, the idea of writing poetry and reading poetry as a way to stay connected to the beauty around you. That's what that book is going to be about. That'll come out probably in the fall or something.
Oh, if you let me know, I'd love to help you promote it. You can come back on and talk about it.
Oh yeah, I'd love to come back and talk. And it's again another way to try to help invite people into like stilling, stillness, silence, seeing what's really in front of you. My uncle is Gary Chapman. Mm-hmm. He wrote the 5 love languages, and I tease him all the time. He's a Southern Baptist minister, and I'm not a Southern Baptist minister, and I tease him all the time that his book, which has sold like 14 billion copies or something ridiculous, it's like a Buddhist book, because all it's doing is asking you to pay attention to the person right in front of you and to start speaking their love language instead of imposing yours on them. So I tease them that it's like a Buddhist book. But this is what I'm trying to do, is like ask people to pay attention to what's right in front of them, and to come with love and compassion.
Live for the moment.
Yes.
Stop living in the past, and you can have goals, but don't live like you're in the future.
That's right.
Pay attention to the moment. You might miss something. That the first words of your, whether it be your own child or your grandbaby,
anything like that.
There's so many beautiful moments. I mean, in nature alone.
Oh yeah, you were just talking about it. Yeah, nature is so healing. And if you're on your phone the whole time you're on your hike, you're missing something. But that's exactly what that's why I love Buddhism so much, is that like they're just like, live in the present, live in the now, be here. Okay, I'll try.
Right. That's right. And I'll put out a prayer for everyone that just get to know your neighbor.
That's right.
You never know who you could meet. They have a great story to tell, and let's stop all this fighting and arguing. And
Everybody has a story to tell. I'm
Exactly.
convinced. And if we get to know each other's stories, we can understand where people are coming from a bit more. So I'm with you on that prayer, brother. Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone that's joined us. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. For those of you who are regular, thank you so much for your support. And so until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network